In this episode, we're talking to PhD student Rodney Hughes, who is a cultural anthropologist here at LSU. Rodney, I hear you've been doing some research on the mourner's bench. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my research on the mourner's bench actually is a continuation from my master thesis that deals with theosis and deification. And I wanted to, one of the things that my professor talked to me about when I was doing this research was you always want to have your research have an authentic lens. And so speak about it in ways that it connects to your own experience, right? And so I thought about that, I gave a lot of thought to that. And I was thinking, okay, so how does deification or theosis show up in the Black community? And that was the main crux of my question. And then it got me thinking about this concept that my parents used to talk about all the time here in Louisiana when I was growing up in Northwest Louisiana. They often talked about this process or this experience of the mourner's bench. And I'm like, what is that? What are you guys talking about, being a younger generation? But it was something that persisted within the family lore that they talked about a lot. My mom, talked about her experience when she was deciding that she was going to accept Christ into her life. But at the time that they were kids, probably was in the 1940s, or probably the late 30s, the early 40s. And so in that time, they were not able to just say, I'm going to be baptized. There was a process that they had to go through before they were allowed to actually accept Christ or to accept that divinity exists. And so there was a period where when you were in the church, they would set you apart from the rest of the congregation on this wooden bench that would be in the church. And that was to signify that you're being set aside from the society or set aside from the community, but set aside in a way that you could learn. It's kind of like a coming of age ritual as well. So you could learn that not only that you are becoming an adult, but that at the same time there's a spiritual life that comes with this kind of adulthood. And so having been set aside so that the congregation could pray for you, so that you could do your own prayers, and the use of this discourse mixed with music and the performative was a way to drive the convertant into this kind of liminal space. And once they would go into this liminal space, having had this experience that would lift them up out of the body and allow them to have an experience with divinity. And it was through that experience that you would either accept or deny your connection to your own divinity or to greater divinity, some might say, to God. And so the research centers around that. And as I was saying before, it is a continuation of my thesis project that I did in the seminary that dealt with this whole idea of theosis, which is firmly based in the Greek Orthodox tradition. But you can also find, it traces its roots back to the Desert Fathers in northwestern Africa and goes into some areas into Ethiopia, dealing with the Orthodox Church there, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church into the first church in Europe, the Hagia Sophia, that movement. And then it finds itself also deeply rooted within the Catholic tradition. There were many Jesuits who actually did this kind of ascetic practice of cleansing and purifying the body so that you would be able to enter into this space of divinity, or this space that would allow you to lift up and be connected to God in a way that is supernatural, superhuman, but it would give you this, you would walk away from this experience understanding that that which is unseen still exists. So I draw on this kind of history that is based in this tradition, and I try to see how it is that we use this in the Black community, in the African American community, in those people who were brought over during the time of enslavement to the United States, and particularly those who ended up in the South, in the rural South, like much of my family. So I try to see how this idea of theosis impacted their experience, and I draw conclusions of that based on the experience of the mourner's bench.
Okay, now you mentioned a liminal space. Could you talk a little bit about that, or maybe give us some examples?
Okay, well, let's put it like this. Okay, so a part of the research that I am engaging in deals also with dreams, prophetic dreams, awakened dreams. I think in folklore, in African American folklore, it's looked at as lucid or vivid dreams. And so I want to draw lines between this Eastern Orthodox movement and also how it is within many West African religions, how they use this idea of theosis as a way of connecting to the unseen world. And it would be the unseen, or what would we call the deities or luas within many of the West African religious traditions. But when we move into this Western ideal of Christianity, which you're getting a conflation of these two things happening once the slaves are on American soil, and so they're bringing those traditions of West Africa, mixing it with Christianity, and wanting to see how that actually manifests itself. And one of the ways that I am finding that it manifested itself was through this experience of the mourner's bench. And so I explore that, and then I go deeper into that exploration, looking at folklore and tales about how they also use lucid dreams as a way of power production. So I'm looking at not only this idea of theosis. I'm looking at it in terms of power. It is a way of producing power that will move you into a liminal space. And African Americans historically have used this through their discourse, through music, very particularly through music, and other performative aspects, to move them out of a realm of the common or the profane into a level of the profound interaction with things that are unseen.
Well, that sounds really interesting there, Rodney. I'd like to thank you for your time, and this has been Dwayne Hinton, and this has been another episode of Better Than a Lecture.